more than a year, I've been hoping to have some kind of presentation about outdoor lighting, night lighting, particularly after these huge lights went up in the parking lots at DuPont Forest, just before the breeding of the blue ghost fireflies was about to take place. And so I got really concerned about the amount of light that's being added to Transylvania County. So I put just a brief bio for Stephen in the agenda, so you have that information. And I think I'll just go ahead and, I guess, Stephen, you'll be sharing your screen?
Yeah, I can do
Okay.
it.
It's all yours.
Okay, well, thank you, Bart. Thanks, everyone, for inviting me to speak to you today. I'd like to talk about the importance of not only dark skies, but mitigation of light pollution and the influence that light has on both ourselves, human health, and the natural environment. And there's lots of wins here. And so I'm really coming from a place of win-win for everyone in terms of mitigating light pollution and creating darker environments for everyone, both the human and the natural world. And because some people are coming in on audio, they may not be able to see some aspects of the presentation. Feel free to unmute yourself at any time, ask any questions. We can kind of go deeper in any aspect I talk about today. And I'm also happy to share the presentation as a follow-up. I think it'll also be recorded, so you have that as an access as well. Let me share my screen just to begin. And go right here. Let's get that. Go here. All right, can you all see the presentation now? Good.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, as an astronomer, of course, night skies are important to me, and I'm a passionate stargazer, and I've grown up under dark skies all the places I've lived. Some people are surprised to learn that we actually spend half our lives underneath the night sky. Doesn't matter where you live on Earth, half the time that part of the Earth is in darkness. Now, if you're at the poles, it might be 6 months of darkness followed by 6 months of light. If you're closer to the equator or mid-latitudes, it's more balanced throughout the year. But we all have at least 12 hours of darkness on average through the course of the year. And the natural world has developed according to these diurnal cycles, these cycles of light and dark. They're kind of woven into the natural environment. And so many organisms, including ourselves, require darkness as well as light. Okay. And there's a lot to see in the night sky. You folks in Transylvania County are lucky to have some nice dark skies down there. You've got Perry, which is a great educational resource for why we should preserve the night sky, what's important about it. There's a lot that people don't realize that you can see in the night sky. For example, I was doing some stargazing, for the North Carolina Arboretum this Tuesday, and a lot of people were surprised that you can see the moons of Jupiter with a pair of binoculars, right? Or the rings of Saturn, with your bird watching binoculars, point them towards Jupiter and Saturn, which are nice and high in the sky these evenings, and you can see things. You can see all kinds of things that you wouldn't know to look for if you couldn't see the sky and interact with it. Plus, here's an image from Iceland. There's the aurora. There's all kinds of other natural features, including fireflies, that you're not going to see if you don't go out in the dark. Okay. And we're losing contact with the night sky. In the past 150, 125 years, since we've been electrifying and lighting our cities and urban areas, people have lost touch with the night sky, and it's affecting astronomy. So this is outside Tucson, Arizona, before they did some light pollution mitigation. And even astronomers are losing access to the capacity to do their research because of encroachment from urbanization and light pollution from that. Okay. This is a nice image because it really shows the kind of separation that humans have done from the night sky and the natural world. Here's this gorgeous image of the Milky Way and the stars and the galaxy that we're a part of, and everyone else is not seeing this because they're underneath their light domes. All right, so they're not seeing this incredible galaxy that's above our heads every night because they're immersed in this dome of light that prevents the light of the cosmos from coming through. So look what you're missing out if you're staying at home underneath the lights. This is over Salzburg, Austria. You've got gorgeous night skies, and people are kind of, snug at homes underneath their light domes. So it's just a reminder that this whole natural world is out there waiting to be appreciated, but we have to kind of, turn off the lights in order to see it. Okay. It's gotten worse over time. This is a dramatic example from LA, 1908, and then almost 100 years later, the encroachment as this urbanization has taken place and the loss of the night that's involved. And of course, increasing lighting means increase of use of energy, and energy issues are, of course, a big concern today. This is a light pollution map of the US, and you can see how it's progressed over the past couple of decades and where it's predicted to go if we don't take measures on large scales to mitigate this. Okay. Here's the difference, right? So on the left is an image of Orion, the constellation Orion, as you would see under dark skies. And on the right is what you would see from a typical urban environment. Right? So it's a huge difference in quality, but also in terms of quantity and the richness of the sky. Now for astronomy, of course, this is important for me, but also for kids. I mean, many kids, have never seen the stars, right? Especially kids in urban environments. They've never seen the night sky, they've never seen the stars. They have a disconnection from the natural world, and that has consequences down the road. Okay. You may have seen these posters of the Earth at night. Really, amazing image taken by satellites over the course of a year, and then they average the images. So it's really pretty to look at the Earth at night and see all the lights that are lighting up the Earth. But this is also showing where light pollution is a big issue, right? So every place where you're seeing it being lit up here, that's light pollution, and it's also wasted energy, because this is light that's going up into space that's being viewed by satellites. It's not doing anyone any good because it's not helping you see what you're looking for. It's basically energy being shot into space and being wasted. You can see there's still, quite a few areas where there are low populations where there aren't a lot of lights, but in terms of urbanization, it's becoming a huge issue. Here's the US. In fact, you can even trace some of the major highway routes across the country, by the lights that they trace. I'll zoom in a little bit further. This is with false coloring, kind of showing intensity of lights. And then for our area, I'm gonna pause the screen here, share a different screen. And this is one of the resources in the handout I sent you. This is the light pollution map that you can actually scan in on. You look at Asheville and how it's grown along the corridors for the highways, but also Brevard has increased as well. I mean, this connector between Hendersonville and Brevard, still quite dark, in some of the state forest around, but it's an issue. And including Rosman, where Perry is, I mean, that's growing as well. This data is from 2016, and so it's increased since then. But this is a nice map. This is one of the resources in the handout I gave you. You can scan around, see what the light pollution looks like. This is from satellite data. A lot of people ask me, well, where do you go to do stargazing? Well, it's like, look at this map here and see where the lights aren't, and that's a pretty good spot. So we're lucky in terms of where we are in Western North Carolina to have access to a lot of dark skies, but it's something we need to preserve. We need to be conscious about it if we want to continue that, having that legacy. Let me go back here. And go here. Yep. Yeah. So the definition of light pollution I'm using here is excess light produced by humans. There are natural forms of light, such as the moon and starlight, but this is in addition to that, and has several dramatic effects. Right, it prevents us from seeing the night sky, which has an aesthetic component. It has a tremendous effect on ecosystems, both human and natural ecosystems. It's a waste of energy. It has dramatic health effects, and I'll highlight some of those. And it's a form of pollution, and I would argue it's as serious as air, water, and land pollution. And I'd like to point out, we protect the land, the water, and the air. Why not the night sky? It's one of these types of pollutions that's kind of pervasive in our environments. It's almost invisible to us because we don't realize its effects, but they're dramatic effects, just as severe as land, air, or water pollution. Okay. I won't go through all this, but the important thing here is the natural environment grew up under hundreds of millions of years of dark and light cycles. And so having excess lighting disrupts those cycles. Lots of birds, of course, are affected in terms of migrating. They run into lit up buildings. This is more important in large cities, but a lot of birds are killed because of collisions with overly lit buildings. Amphibians, of course, are very sensitive to night dark cycles, as are fish. Insects are attracted to light at night, and when they're attracted to artificial lights, they're not in the environment where they could be a food source for other organisms. It also disrupts their mating cycles. And then mammals that have sophisticated hormone systems. Many of these hormones are light sensitive, and they can be disrupted by an excess of light at night. And so there's a lot of disturbances of the natural world from lighting that are only now just being understood. This is a book of papers that came out a few years ago. I won't go through all the details, but a lot of the natural cycles in terms of reproduction, food scavenging, and other nocturnal or diurnal activities for animals are disrupted by artificial light lighting. Let's see. Insects, of course, are hugely impacted. This is all the mayflies around a security light. And because these mayflies are here, they're not out in the environment as a food source for other organisms. And insects are the base of the food pyramid for many higher organisms. If there's a loss of that food source, there's a diminishment of species. Another concern in our area is we have a lot of songbirds. Songbirds rely on caterpillars, which are often on the canopy of the trees. These caterpillars eventually become moths. Moths are attracted to lights, and if the moths are drawn away from the environments, if they have a premature mortality, then the food source isn't available to the songbirds, and you see a decline in songbird populations. Also, fireflies in our area are famous. People come from around the world to see the fireflies. They are disrupted in terms of the reproductive cycles by artificial lighting. It's still being understood what's happening in terms of the biological consequences, but there's been a diminishment of fireflies. I've noticed that, and maybe you've seen it as well, that firefly numbers have changed over the past couple of decades. And this could be partly due to artificial lighting. A couple species are migrating birds and bats, which have been known to use the night sky for navigation. They use positions of star patterns, the sun and the moon for navigating. If there's artificial light sources, that throws them off. It affects their migratory ability to go long distances, and can impact those species as well. Okay. Plants. People are surprised that plants are affected by light at night. I've had some discussions with people about landscape lighting at night, because a lot of people like to light up their yards at night and have some kind of night lighting feature. But plants are extremely sensitive to light. I mean, they've of course grown up in trying to absorb as much light from the sun. And so they have hormone systems and all kinds of photoreceptors that are very sensitive to light. One example of this, if you take a look at this picture here, look at this maple tree, which is not going dormant because it's been exposed to this unshielded light fixture here. So the parts of the tree that were exposed to the light don't know that it's time to go dormant. And of course, this stresses the tree because it doesn't go dormant early enough, and it leads to a shortened lifespan for the trees. So here's a dramatic example of what can happen to trees when they're exposed to too much artificial lighting at night. And it's not an isolated event. Light can travel long distances, much further than, say, water or land pollution in some cases. This is light from Moab, over 200 miles away. And so light travels in straight lines, and it can travel very, very far and have very large impacts over great distances. Okay. Yeah. So you may have noticed a difference in light pollution, especially in Brevard, as more and more people move to this area, as people develop new businesses. How are those businesses being regulated in terms of the light options that they use for lighting? There's win-wins here. There's ways to actually do lighting that's smart, that's environmentally friendly, and that also serves human needs as well as the natural needs. And I'll talk about some of those in a bit. Any questions so far? Good. So there are a couple programs that are in place. Oh, go ahead. Someone have a question?
I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering, are there any sort of, I mean, I know I've had to deal with addressing light from like a NEPA perspective in just working on like environmental assessments here, but is there some sort of regulatory trigger or that you know of? Are other communities developing some sort of like standards for light pollution? Is there something we could look at as a county, as a model?
Yeah. In fact, I emailed a copy of a model ordinance that people can, apply in their communities to regulate some of these lightings, both in terms of the intensity and the types of lights that are regulated. The Astronomy Club of Asheville has done a lot of advocacy for light pollution mitigation in dark skies, and they've worked very closely with Buncombe County and the city of Asheville in developing night sky friendly ordinances. They've made really good strides, and Asheville's light ordinance, and I have a link to it in the resources that I sent you, is one of the most progressive in North Carolina, and it's a nice example. Some of the astronomers think they didn't go far enough, but it's always a conversation between human needs and natural needs, and of course what astronomers want. But yeah, I can certainly connect you with some of these ordinances and some guidelines, and I'll talk about those later on as well.
Great, thank you.
Good, yeah. So these are some programs that cities are voluntarily doing. This started in Toronto, having building owners turn out their lights at night in these large buildings because of the bird mortality. It's made a big difference. Of course, it's voluntary at this point, but the building owners, of course, are saving money by turning off the lights that are lighting up the buildings that people don't use because they're not in the buildings at night. So there's these lights out programs, and this is mostly in large urban areas, but doesn't mean it couldn't be applied voluntary in smaller areas as well. Okay. National Park Service has responded, across the whole park system with having full cutoff features for their lighting and timed lights as well. So the lights only go on, for a certain part of the night, or they're motion triggered. And then there's increasing guidance in terms of lighting for towers in order to protect these migratory birds, which often migrate at night and are disoriented by lit up structures. Lots more I can say about that, but the main thing I want to point out is that even though the effects of light pollution are as severe in some cases as chemical pollution, it's much easier to clean it up. You don't need to have big cleanup efforts to clean up light pollution as you do chemical pollution. You just have to turn the lights off, and then the ecosystem really very quickly restores itself. So it's very cheap in terms of environmental restoration, even though the impacts are as severe in some cases. So it's an easy fix if you can get people to turn the lights off or redirect the lighting to where it needs to be. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Okay. So there's significant effects on human health, and many people are unaware of this. So I always like to share this information because it brings a personal stake in the lighting conversation. Almost half the population lives in urban areas where people actually never have to become dark adept at night. And this has dramatic effects in terms of our hormone systems in the human body, melatonin suppression, and sleep cycles. Many people have increasing insomnia issues, and of course that affects their ability to focus, but also to regulate bodily functions. And many of these are triggered by overlighting at night. The main thing is that overlighting at night, and this includes staying up late, watching screens, exposing your eyes to light, just before bedtime. It disrupts circadian rhythms and suppresses melatonin. And there's been links to several different types of cancers from this melatonin disruption. So it's not just a casual issue. It has dramatic effects. Couple impacts that have been significant enough that the American Medical Association issued a report, especially about blue ridge white light, which our eyes are most sensitive to, that does the most melatonin disruption. You may have heard about adjusting your screens to have less blue. That's important. Blue-rich LED street lighting is much more disruptive than other colors. I'll talk about color temperature in terms of light fixtures in a little bit. But it's this blue light that's extremely activating for the human nervous system and the melatonin system. And so it's important to really diminish that. So there can be lighting at night, but if you're going to have lighting at night, make sure it's more warmer colors, more red. In fact, some people have switched their night lights to red lights, which our eyes are least sensitive to, so they have the least disruption on our sleep cycles. Astronomers always use red lights in observatories because it allows you to see at night, but it preserves your night vision at the same time. Let's see what else. Yeah, and then circadian rhythm disruption, caused by melatonin suppression, has been linked to, diabetes, obesity, and especially breast cancer. In fact, this melatonin disruption has been classified as a class 2 carcinogen, right? The same level of severity as tobacco smoke or lung cancer, right? So it's pretty dramatic, the effects that people have, that it has on people. Of course, depression and all kinds of hormone regulations in the body gets disrupted by too much light. So a couple personal recommendations for your health. Use red lights at night if you can. Try not to look at bright screens just before bed. A lot of people have Kindles that they read with. Sometimes there's a dimming or a blue shift that you can actually apply to these that will actually shift the wavelength of the light that you're reading with, so that's fine. The important thing, and I've talked to some sleep specialists about this, it's important to have a routine that actually winds down your body and gives it the cue it's time for bed. So a couple hours before, try to get off screens, try to have a lower light environment. These are kind of environmental cues for your body that tells us it's time to get ready for bed. And of course, if you have to work at night, then try to block out the blue wavelengths to prevent that disruption. Now, also on the other side of this, bright light is important in the daytime because that's also a regulatory stimulus for our bodies as well. So, blue-rich light in the daytime is fine because that activates the system and has the opposite effect. But at nighttime in dark environments, our eyes and our brains and our bodies actually need the darkness in order to fully restore. Okay. A couple other recommendations, and this will be in the notes. Make sure your sleeping environment's, totally dark, as dark as you can. Your body needs the darkness. And we need that, the deep uninterrupted sleep for restoration. There's a great book, I can't remember the name, I think it's called Why We Sleep, and it's by a neuroscientist, and he talks about all the important health benefits of getting good night's sleep. It's not optional, it's really required that we get very deep uninterrupted sleep as much as possible. Okay. The other factor that I like to point out for communities is that light pollution costs money, right? Any light that's going up into the sky is essentially energy being shot into space. That's not doing anyone any good. It's wasted. Annual cost of lost light from streetlights, $2 to $5 billion. And I won't go into this too much detail, but the amount of light that's going into space that's being wasted, of course, corresponds to lots of coal being burned, oil, and so as such, wasted public lighting is a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions. So if you want to do something that really helps mitigate the effects of climate change, redirect the lights and use less lighting, because less energy means less fossil fuels being consumed to produce the energy and less impact on the environment. This is a nice illustration because this shows, how much energy is wasted by 100 watts of dusk to dawn lighting every year. So a half ton of coal gets burned just to produce the light for that one light bulb. Dusk to dawn lighting doesn't increase safety. There's a misperception of the public about that more light makes things safer. Studies show that that's not true. And I'll give you some examples of how to do this in a smart way that address people's need for security, but also provide the darkness that the natural world needs. Okay. Just a reminder, light pollution is also air pollution because you're using fossil fuels generally to produce that light. Okay. wasted light. I think you know you're getting the point. Yeah. So main things you can do to mitigate light pollution. Make sure that light fixtures are shielded, and I'll show you some examples of good shielded light fixtures that have a big effect. Use lower wattage bulbs. We're lucky to have access to compact fluorescents and LEDs, which use much less energy than incandescents, but the color wavelength makes a difference. Use directed lighting. Put the light where you need it, not where you don't. All right. So if you only need to light a certain part of your property, then just have directed lighting there. Sensor-based lights are best because then if it's not being used, the light won't be on. Plus, there's increased security. If someone trespasses your property, the sensor triggers, the light goes on, and they're startled by that. Okay.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead. Yeah, please.
Question?
Yeah, of course.
On the lighting that for streets and travel like that, do you have some guidelines that we could use or offer to the county as to what would meet the highway safety requirements for traveling, but at the same time, other than obviously reducing the amount of blue light, but the kind of design of the lights that would be used on highways, it would give the people who are concerned about being able to see, but also address some of these light problems that we've got with the light that is just being wasted going up in the skies.
Yeah, I can get some recommendations for those. I can't recommend specific fixtures because it's not my area of expertise, but I can sort of address some of the requirements that those fixtures should fit.
Okay, thank you.
And then, yeah. That's great. So here are some examples, right? So fully shielded light directs the light downwards. The stars are above it, the light's downwards. You're not wasting the energy by shooting up into space. And it's fully shielded in that the light is going down, and also the light bulb is recessed into this cap here, and so it's not creating glare. Glare is when the light's shining directly in your eyes. You can't see as well because you're being blinded by looking at the light directly. This is shining it down where you need it. These types of old type fixtures, are terrible because the light's going upwards into space in addition to down. This is awful, these globe lights, because look at the person underneath the street lamp. I mean, they can't even see what's beneath them because the light's going everywhere else. And I'll give you some dramatic examples of how municipalities have done this, very well, also very poorly. All right, so here's Salem, Massachusetts, which has these kind of historical globe lights. It's terrible. Notice how dark the areas around the street light, because all the light is being shown into your eyes. So it's glare, which means you're being blinded at night, and it's not effectively lighting the street below it. It's you probably couldn't even read a newspaper below this light because the light is going everywhere else. Okay. Here's some other examples. I've walked around Asheville and looked at some examples of this is a business that has the light going outwards. This is my neighbor's house before I had a conversation with him, where he had these big floodlights that were sensor activated that went right into my bedroom window. There's some resources about how to have a conversation with your neighbor about this and maintain the neighborly relationship. So there's some great resources I'll tell people about. But I had a conversation with him, and he changed the lights. Okay. Now, this is important, especially for municipalities. The type of lights has an effect on security. So glare reduces the vision. So take a look at this person here underneath the street lights and see where they go. I'll go back in here. The person's still there in the picture. And notice that they're right here underneath the street light. All right, and you can't see them because there's so much glare. All right, so here they are. There they are underneath the street light. All right, so for security, right, this is not the type of lighting that you want in your communities, because people are not necessarily going to be safer, especially if someone can hide right underneath the light. It's going to blind people, especially in a pedestrian zone where they're going to be blinded for oncoming traffic. Yeah, it's just not good.
Now,
Go ahead.
Are we sure that crosswalk is not just haunted?
Yeah, good. There you go. Right. So who knows what's hiding in the dark? But you know, it's not just important. It's not just important for pedestrians, but also for drivers. I mean, look at this person. You know, picking up these people at the airport. They've got a box light shining right in their eyes. They can't see the people. If the light is contained where it needs to be, then it improves the conditions for drivers and pedestrians. Here's a terrible example of businesses, right? The lights, these box lights that have attached to buildings, shining just straight outwards, creates huge dark area shadows, blinds people coming up to it. And here's how it could be. You know, have these recessed lights that are, these kind of capped, they're going downwards, it looks attractive. It lights the areas where you need it. It doesn't light the areas where you don't. So there's ways to do it that really look attractive and are effective in terms of providing night lighting. Another example, this is just walking around Asheville. It's like, oh, this actually looks nice at night, and it's not shining it, outwards. Notice the lights here. This light above the door is shining it right below the door where it's needed. It's not shining outwards. All right, so direct the light where you need it, have it capped, have a cutoff fixture, direct the light downwards. The problem is a lot of these fixtures that people use were designed for flame sources when you needed light to go in all different directions. Now that we have much more powerful light sources, it makes a big difference. And so these are the kinds of fixtures that you want. And there's a handout, I think I may have included or a reference to it. These are the types of fixtures you want. You can have these old historical type fixtures. Notice the bulb is recessed up here in the top, and the top is reflective. And because it's reflective, you can use a lower wattage bulb and get the same amount of light coming out of the fixture because it's reflecting the light downwards. It's not being wasted upwards. So there's even these more historical ones in the lower right that have this kind of, nice antique look, but it's got a reflective top to it that directs the light downwards. The main thing is, make the light go down where it has to go, not up or out where it's going to be blinding other people or affecting the environment. And I'll give people some resources for where to find these too. Okay. Shielded luminaries. This is, a volunteer fire station before and afterwards. Big difference in terms of the energy they're saving, but also the attractiveness of the buildings as well. Okay. Yeah. So here's good and bad. All right. These wall packs are terrible because they're just shining light everywhere. Directed downwards. Use a lower wattage fixture. You're saving money. You're not using as much light. Yep. Here's what someone did with a pineapple can for their porch light. All right. So before, you could hardly even see the stairs that you want to see to go into your house. Using a pineapple can as a shield, it directed the light downwards. You can see the stairs. It makes for a safe environment for what you want the light for. Okay. And then also there's this misperception that's been around for a long time that more light makes things safer, but the evidence shows that that's not actually true. In fact, bad lighting can actually make it less safe because of these glares and shadow areas that it creates. Okay. Outdoor lighting can actually be done really well, right? So for example, look at the sports lighting, right? Just the field is lit up where you need it. It's dark in between the fields where you don't need the light. It's really, nicely done, even on large scales. Stadiums can be shielded very well. So you don't have to turn off the lights at night when people want to have nighttime activities. They just have to be done in a smart way. Okay. Of course, you don't see this so much anymore, but when I was growing up, there were all these, spotlights and searchlights and things going up. Terrible, of course, because the light's just shooting into space. Okay. And then in terms of neighborhoods, right? This is called light trespass, when the light from your neighbor is actually trespassing across your property line and onto your property. Right? Well, it's not so hard to just redirect your floodlight down to their property line. Right? And then also to, point out that there's benefits to having lower wattage lights in terms of saving energy and still, maintaining their right to light their property and feel safe at night. And there's a whole resource kit that I'll point people to in terms of how to have conversations in the community about creating good neighbors with lighting. So here's a gas station, where it's done, really badly, especially with these very bright LEDs, which are much brighter than incandescents, and then how it could be done otherwise. All right, so the good examples, of what, can be done to still create lit areas at night to maintain safety. Okay. Even airports can do it. All right. So these traditional highlight environments can also take mitigation effects. A couple things. So just for comparison, a lot of people know about this because incandescents have really been phased out. They're even hard to buy at the stores these days. I don't know if you can even buy them. There's compact fluorescents and LEDs, which use much less light, much less energy for producing the same amount of light. They're much more efficient. In fact, incandescents are used as heat lamps in many cases because they put out more heat than light. Now, the important thing here to recognize is that there are different types of LEDs in terms of the amount of light they give off in the wavelengths. The ones you want to stay away from are the blue LEDs. And so the recommendation is to use LEDs or lighting sources with a color temperature of less than 3,000 degrees, right? So color temperature is an indication of the color and also the temperature of the filament. You want to stay away from the blue-rich lighting because that has the most disruptive effects on human melatonin, but also on the natural environment. So shift more towards warm LEDs. They weren't as available as they are today a few years ago, but now they're much more prevalent and the cost is equivalent. So choose LEDs with a color temperature of less than 3,000 degrees. And I'll have a handout that'll give you that says that. So notice the difference, right? The blue-rich has a much cooler tone to it versus the warmer ones. The warm ones are better at night for your eyes and your nervous systems. And then there's good examples. Asheville has done a lot, Buncombe County has done a lot in terms of retrofitting their fixtures with LEDs and low temperature LEDs. They've tried to mitigate outdoor commercial and restaurant lighting, and then eliminating unnecessary fixtures. By the way, if you have a fixture on your property, a street light that isn't going off, you might be paying the electric bill for that. So check your electricity bill and make sure you're not paying for a commercial fixture that's near your property, such as a street light. Okay. Neighborhoods, people can do things about streetlights. You can request a full cutoff shield. I don't think they're required to do it, but you can make that request. Look at the street light here going into this person's window. It's going to disrupt their health. So municipalities can do something about this if they want to. Okay. Talk to your neighbors about this. The main advocacy organization around the world for light pollution is the International Dark Sky Association, and the website is darksky.org. There's some great resources here about talking to your neighbors and also for municipalities. There's a resource on the resource page I sent you, everyone. But there's great ways to actually talk to your neighbors about it and look for a win-win. Okay. Recommendations, I'll just let you read this, but the main thing is fully shielded and warm white or filtered LEDs that have a color temperature of 3,000 degrees or less. If you can have it on a motion detector or timer, that's even better because you're reducing the amount of time that the light's actually being used, or it's only being used as necessary. I've heard in Germany, some of the streetlights that light the highways are being fitted with motion sensors, because why light the highway if no one's driving on it? So the lights on the highway, go on ahead of the cars and then go off after the cars pass. Okay. And the main thing is, at the bottom here, light the space that you need, don't light the space that you don't need. So here's success stories, right? LA, of course, is a huge municipality. They've retrofitted their old street lights. They're saving millions every year in unwasted lighting with LEDs and also shielded fixtures. Around the country and the world, dark sky communities are being developed. A lot of these organizations have voluntarily taken on these light mitigation measures, and they've created a whole tourist draw, and that people want to go there to see the dark skies. So one example, well, here's a couple examples. These are places around the country that are doing dark sky friendly lighting. This is both national parks, but also municipalities. Here's one example of Fountain Hills outside Phoenix, Arizona has done this in the past couple of years. I've been in contact with them. And every year they celebrate this with the Dark Sky Festival, which brings in lots of tourists. They have a local astronomy group that does presentations. But people go there to see the night sky. And because they've done such a good job with the lighting, they're an example community that other people are in contact with to get resources. So here's Fountain Hills, outside Phoenix, major city. And the community decided in roughly 2012, 2014, to transition to becoming a dark sky community. There's a designation you can have for the Dark Sky Association. Citizens got involved, business got involved, and now they have this festival, and it's a major tourist draw for people in the area to actually visit them to see what they've done. Here's examples of what local businesses did. You can notice the glare from the Sherwin-Williams store before and afterwards. Looks much more attractive, much more evenly lit, and it's a source of pride for the community. Okay. And then, in terms of the people I've talked to in Fountain Hills, there's, community pride about being a dark sky community. It's a designation offered. They've met the requirements, and realtors are receiving a request for property in the area because of the dark skies. They're getting lots of tourism. HOAs have motivated to adapt these in their guidelines. And of course, the energy expense to the community is a big savings as well. All right, so there's some really great success stories that are happening. I won't go into this too much detail, but the main thing is, what I said before, cap the maximum light output. In other words, in your ordinances, try to have a cap on the amount of lumens that are being produced by each fixture, and also the color temperature, and requiring fully shielded fixtures in the ordinances. And I've got model ordinances that I sent everyone that describe that. Okay. Some other places have. Go ahead.
I think perhaps you have the wrong, or someone has the wrong email address for me or phone numbers, because you've been mentioning several things that you sent to us, and I haven't received any of that information. If that's something, I can follow up with you on, Ms. Gregg, to make sure that I've got the proper contact information. I appreciate it, because I have not been receiving the kind of stuff.
Okay, yeah, I think I only sent it to Kent yesterday, and he may not have had a chance to send it to everyone, or maybe your email address is off, but
Right, I'll get it to you when I get it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ken.
I'll make sure people have it. Yeah, that's great.
You sent it to me. I have not forwarded it to the rest of the TNRC members yet. So, Greg, I've got your address, but I did not forward those handouts.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Got it. Yeah, I've got handouts. If you have any questions, you're welcome to be in touch. But the point here is,
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, please.
Are there any external funding sources or grants that municipalities or organizations could seek out to change lighting fixtures and things like that?
That's a great question, and I don't know at this point. I would think that Duke Energy, with its homeowner savings program, would also have a municipality branch of that too. I don't know if they do.
Okay.
But yeah.
Another question?
Yeah, please.
I'm wondering what you know about the program that Brevard has launched, the city has launched, to retrofit its street lighting, and to what extent it might conform with the best practices that you're talking about.
I'd love to know more about that. I don't know what they've done.
I can tell you guys about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Brevard lighting ordinance, it'll probably say what the requirements are. Do you want to say something about that now? Is this a good conversation to have? What's Brevard doing?
Yeah, I think, Aaron, can you address that for us?
Yeah, I can, if you guys can hear me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're working with Duke to convert the mercury vapor lights to LED. We got a generous donation from the local Sierra Club to help make that happen, and we did pick the 3,000 Kelvin temperature lights. So that's underway. I was curious to hear about the intensity of those LEDs, because this has been happening across North Carolina with Duke trying to get these converted, and a lot of municipalities are getting complaints from residents saying that new LEDs are too bright. Because it's something about the wavelength. They actually, even though it's the same wattage or equivalent wattage, it's actually brighter. So I was curious to hear more about that. But I'll also talk real quick about our lighting standards. We do have a lighting chapter in the city's development ordinance, and we require full cutoff shielded fixtures with wall packs and outdoor lighting and signage lighting and things like that. So that is in place inside the city in our development jurisdiction. I'm sure our ordinance could be better and be more dark sky compliant than it is, but we do require full cutoff fixtures as of right now.
That's terrific. That's, and I heard that I think they're recommending like a cap for brightness of something like 8,000 lumens. I forget the exact number, but there's a cap for the amount of light that the fixture can put out. But it's great you guys are going for the warmer LEDs and full cutoffs too.
Yeah, we do have a requirement for how much light can spill over your property lines. Our ordinance is old enough to where it's measured in foot candles instead of lumens.
Okay.
So we definitely need to update that.
Yeah, that's great though. Yeah, so you guys are doing the right things. So this is part of it. And just starting the conversation too, and getting homeowners to voluntarily adapt to these measures too. So
yeah, I need to talk to my neighbor about that.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, I'll show you the resources list and recommend certain ones to follow up on. But you guys are lucky in Transylvania County because you have such astronomical places as Perry, right, which is a dark sky resource, right? It's very dark there. They want to preserve the darkness, and it draws tourists because it's dark. So this is a place you can really boost the community, and saying, well, we're a dark sky community, we preserve the night sky, and
I can attest to that too. I go up to the parkway at night and take pictures of the night sky, and there's lots of people up there on clear, moonless nights doing just that. So it's definitely a draw for the area. Yeah,
and kind of highlight that as a feature of the area. It's not just waterfalls, but it's also dark skies too. So really work with the visitor center and Chamber of Commerce too. But yeah, I know I see a lot of people on the parkway as well. So it's great to see people out there enjoying the night sky.
Can I ask real quick? Stephen, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joel.
Are there, you mentioned the certified communities out in Arizona and such. If our city ordinance and such is aligned with best practices, is it possible to get that type of accreditation for our community to enhance tourism?
Yes, yeah. So you can approach the International Dark Sky Association about this. They do the certification process. They have guidelines and applications on their website, and they're even available to step you through the process too. So yeah, they're great. They're a great organization.
Phenomenal.
We do have some standards in place, but I would be surprised if we already meet the dark sky community standards. We definitely could beef up our standards in that regard.
Yeah.
Stephen, I have a question.
Awareness. Yeah.
This is Ken. I have a question. Has Duke, do they have the appropriate outdoor lighting and the security lighting now that they could switch out the really bright ones? Are you aware of anything?
I don't know. I know they have access to all the fixtures that they need in order to be compliant with that standard.
Okay.
It's whether they're willing to put the expense into retrofitting the current fixtures to bring in the new ones.
Yeah, they installed one on my property. I had the old type, and it was like a Walmart parking lot now, so I need to try to get it altered.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly have a right to file a complaint and to ask for something different. Yeah, that's a good example.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, let me just finish up here. So, just to kind of wrap things up, the night sky is a shared resource. We all have access to it, and our lighting practices not only affect our own property, but also our neighbor's property and the natural world, for the environment around us. The important thing is we need the dark as much as the light. We tend to be very, much of a light-friendly culture, but darkness is as important, especially for our bodies in the natural world. And, it's a shared problem. So our light doesn't stay on our own areas or municipalities, it actually travels. And so it's really everyone's problem, but also it's everyone's solution. And the nice thing is, it's as easy as turning off a light switch in terms of mitigating the effects of some of this lighting and the pollution that it causes. But what a difference, right? So this is what, you could have, and this is what, some people, put up with. So you can still have, a human, a really rich human experience, have a great life, and have one that benefits the environment as well. So I'm just gonna pause it there. I know we're close to time, but I can also go over some of the resources too, if people want to see some of that, see if there's other questions. I'll let you guys know where we're in terms of the meeting time.
We've got, as long as you're available, we've got plenty of time, because the business meeting is going to be short. So
Okay.
I encourage questions. I'll make one comment, something you didn't cover.
Go ahead.
When we first moved here, whenever we would go out for the evening, we left our front porch lights on. At least twice when we came home, there was a copperhead in front of our front door. And we were later told that leaving the lights on at night attracts moths. The moths attract frogs, and the frogs attract copperheads. So we no longer leave our front porch lights on when we go out at night.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Huh. Well, and then one solution for that is, and this isn't available for every fixture, is to have a motion sensor light. So that's, it's only being lit up for certain triggers, presumably, insects and frogs wouldn't trigger them. But, larger humans would. So and the question on that is,
we had motion sensor lights before we moved here. But this time of year when the leaves were below, the lights just kept coming on and off. I have a camera now that requires both a motion and a warm body to turn on.
That's great.
Yeah. So can you do the same thing for outdoor lighting, that you would need both a warm body and motion?
That would be nice. I'm not sure if most fixtures have that capability, but it'd be great if they did, to have that kind of sensor, that sensor accuracy. I think it's coming. We just have to show there has to be a consumer demand for it. I also want to mention that there are fixtures that are available in many of these home supply stores, such as Lowe's and Home Depot, that have the IDA stamp of approval on it. So there's actually a certification, and you can actually go into the stores and look for the IDA label that says this is dark sky friendly lighting. And they're also attractive fixtures, but they have this fully shielded, downward directed fixture design to it. So it's out there. Let me share with you some of the resources. And this is what I shared with Kent that he'll forward on to you, or you can contact me about. Let me share my screen again. And you can take a look here. So here's resources on light pollution and its effects. The main resource I really recommend for people is the International Dark Sky Association, darksky.org. They've got guidelines for homeowners, for municipalities, for effects on the natural world. It's a one-stop resource. On there is a template for ways to have conversations with your neighbor, recommendations for lighting ordinances. It's all under that umbrella of the International Dark Sky Association. They do great advocacy work. Astronomy Club of Asheville has a copy of the Asheville lighting codes, and so you can look at that as a resource. Couple websites just about light pollution in the environment. If you want to know more about effects in the natural world, there's some great resources here. Dr. Mario Moda is a cardiologist in the Boston area. He's an amateur astronomer. He does a lot of talks about the effects of light pollution on human health in terms of melatonin disruption and other hormone effects. He's got a nice presentation on that here, but you'll see his name in terms of medical studies and light pollution. NIH also has some too. How to find dark skies. These are light pollution maps. You can see where the lighting is. And then here's the part I want to share with you all the most is resources for policymakers. So guidelines for public policy, model lighting ordinances from the IDA, examples of bad street lights. Here's the connection to the current Asheville-Buncombe County lighting ordinances, and then examples, and then also the Fountain Hills Dark Sky Association, which is this kind of flagship community that has done this type of mitigation and gone through this process of having a community discussion about how to transition to a dark sky community. So, I tried to keep it short, not to overwhelm people, but a lot of good resources that are out there and easily available that you can share with other people as well. Okay, let me just pause it there and see if there's any other questions.
Are there any other questions? Okay, that was a great presentation, and I think we can now include dark skies as a natural resource for Transylvania County, something that I certainly never thought about before. So
Great.
yeah, good justification to do something to protect yet another natural resource in our county. Thanks very much for joining us. You can stay for the business meeting if you like, but you're welcome to go about your business.
I will. But yeah, thank everyone for listening to the presentation. Feel free to be in touch if you need more resources or want to hear more. I think Kent's got my email, and you're welcome to share that, Kent, if people need any additional information.
Okay,
all right,
great.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
That was great.
Thanks so much, you guys. All right. Have a good day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right, so we'll start the business meeting. Somebody needs to take a break. Just mute yourself and take a break. I think we have a quorum. We certainly did at the beginning, so I think we're in a position to go ahead and proceed with the meeting. I'd like to welcome our new member, Owen Carson. So it's a pleasure to have him aboard for our first meeting. I'm hoping our membership will stay fairly stable over the next year. We have a quorum, so we can proceed. I was reminded that we did not get the minutes for the September meeting in time to review those and approve those at our October meeting. So one addition to the agenda is approval of the minutes for the September meeting. Any comments, any changes, additions to the minutes? And if not, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes for the September TNRC meeting?
Move approval.
I did not understand that comment.